Community Chair of the Community Relations Commission. I call the meeting of the Community Relations Commission to order. Will everyone please stand and join in the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Will the staff please call the roll?
Certainly, we can do that. First, Chair Nugent.
Present.
Thank you. Vice Chair Overall.
Present.
Thank you. Commissioner Crowell.
Present.
Thank you. Commissioner Fernandez.
Present.
Thank you. And Commissioner Bowles.
Present.
Everyone is present.
Okay. Due to the physical distancing protocols in place at this time, we continue to encourage public participation remotely. Information on how to provide public comment is explained at the bottom of the published agenda. There are two ways to participate. First of all, you can join the Zoom meeting by clicking on the link at the top of the agenda. Use the raise your hand button to be called at the appropriate time. Or you can phone in participation, and this can be done by calling 408-638-0968 with the conference ID number. The meeting ID is 891-2391-1454, and the passcode is 733-243. When the item of interest is open for consideration, press *9 to raise your hand, and when called upon, press *6 to unmute, which is different than in the past. When called upon, state your name and provide your comments. These options for public comment will remain available until I close the public comment period for that specific item. Next on the agenda is the approval of minutes. We will now move for approval of the minutes for the meeting of the CRC for the past meeting. Do I hear a motion to accept the minutes as written for August 18th, 2021?
I motion.
Second.
Okay, it has been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Okay. Public comment period. This is the time when any person present may speak to any subject not appearing on this evening's agenda. I want to really stress that. This is for commenting about things that are not on the agenda. Do we have any speakers this evening? Nikki, do we have anybody?
So we do have a couple of people in attendance right now. If any of them are interested in speaking, go ahead and click the raise hand button.
Okay, if you want to comment, remember that state law prevents the commission from taking action on any matter that's not on this agenda. Your comments may be referred to staff for further review. Do we have someone who is ready to speak?
Not yet.
Okay, will the speaker state his or her name and address for the record?
Oh, no, no one's raised their hand yet. I think,
nobody, okay,
yeah.
Nobody's raising their hand, okay. Okay, we'll wait a second and see if there is anybody who wants to be part of the public comment period.
I think they probably want to reserve their comment for tonight's agenda.
Right, okay. Okay, we will now close the public comment period. New business. The requested action is that the Community Relations Commission determine community priorities in preparation of the 2022 and 23 annual plan for the Community Development Block Grant Program and provide comments on property housing needs for the housing element update. Can we have the staff report, please?
Sure.
I'll start real quick, Nikki.
Yeah, of
Um,
course.
Yeah, good evening, and thank you all for attending our community relations meeting tonight. I'm Sandy Council, the housing manager. We have two presenters tonight, Nikki Vu, who you just met, housing specialist on our staff, and Diana Elrod, our housing element consultant. In a few minutes, you'll hear some background on about two community-wide plans that we'll be drafting over the next several months. The Community Development Block Grant Annual Plan for 2022-23, and the Housing Element, which is an 8-year plan from 2023 to 31. In order to make these plans meaningful, as we continue to develop new programs and policies, we first need to understand what the needs are in our community, especially for our lower income residents, those who have disabilities, those who have faced other disadvantages in their lives. So tonight's meeting is intended to be a time for us to listen. We'll provide some basic demographic information that starts to tell the story, but what we want to do is hear from the community members based on your experiences. So with that, I will turn it over to Nikki.
Great, thanks so much, Sandy. So I'll be kicking off the first part of the presentation, and that'll be taking in the community needs in relation to the Community Development Block Grant, or as I'm going to be referring it to for the rest of the presentation, CDBG. Now, what this is a federal grant that we receive on an annual basis. It's an entitlement grant, and what we use it for is essentially public services and capital projects. This is designed to be for improvements to the built environment. So you can think about things such as sidewalks, curb gutter, sidewalk, or it could be things like improvements to our parks, to our lighting, or to our bike lanes. In addition to this, some of the funds are going to be used for public services, but I'll be getting into more detail about that later. Other funds that we use on an annual basis are our housing funds. We collect these through fees, most typically a commercial linkage fee. And this, by the name, you can probably tell, is used for our housing programs. Now, the Community Development Block Grant is for public improvements, but specifically should be geared towards low-income residents. And what that means is we can really only spend them within a certain program area where we have a majority of low-income people residing. The map you see in front of you is the map of our CDBG program area. It takes place in the neighborhoods that we would call North Central or North Shoreview. Whenever we have our public infrastructure projects, we have to keep them relegated to this area per the design of the program. Currently, right now, our big community development project are bike lanes, and we are currently planning to do that all around the area of San Mateo High School. Now, our funding categories are split up into several sections in CDBG. We just went over community development, but we can also spend up to 15% on public services. Every year, we reaffirm our priorities of our public services through this meeting, and also by collecting input from people like yourself, telling us what should our priorities be. And then in addition to this, we can also use some of our CDBG funds for our housing needs. Things such as home load repairs, rehabs, accessibility improvements, and weatherization as well. Some of the community development activities that I've already previously listed, such as street and sidewalk repairs, we've done in the past. So we can also do things such as community facility improvements, public buildings, and also improvements to our parks. This is a list of our current public service priorities. We've listed 4. We have basic human needs, which is things like food, shelter, clothing, as well as legal services and economic development. We've listed senior services, so services but specifically geared to our elderly residents, youth services, which can also include educational services, and then our housing services. Tonight, we'll be asking our commission whether or not they want to re-adopt these priorities for our CDBG program. Now I'm going to turn this over to our housing consultant, Diana Elrod, who's going to be doing the rest of the presentation for our housing element outreach.
So there's an intersection between the work of the CDBG analysis as well as housing element, which is basically, and I'll talk a little bit about what the housing element is in a minute, but it's also looking at that both of them look at housing needs for households primarily of lower incomes. And I want to share a few demographics that will be related to this. Between 1980 and 2019, population grew by about 35%, while housing units have grown by about 25%. Next slide, please. You can see that there's between 2010 and 2015, there was a very big jump in the number of jobs in San Mateo, with a tailing off after that time. The largest growing sectors during this period included professional and managerial services, construction, health and educational services, etc. And in contrast, information and retail saw substantial losses during that period. Next slide, please. You know, we talk about the median age in a community, and although the median age is 37.2 years in San Mateo, in fact, some of the largest segments of the community are under the age of 34. Next slide, please. According to the American Community Survey of 2019, which is an ongoing estimate through the Census Bureau, 35% of households in San Mateo earn less than $100,000 per year. And we'll talk about why that's important in a bit. At the other end of the spectrum, 34%, an almost equal amount, earn of more than $200,000 per year. Next slide, please. These income disparities result in affordability issues for lower income households. According to recent trends for sale housing, the median home price is about $1.6 million in San Mateo. After a down payment of more than $300,000, a household would have a mortgage payment of at least $6,200 a month, not including taxes, maintenance, and other costs. And on the right-hand side, all the asking rents here represent the median. Rather, that is there's an equal number of rents asked above that and below it. So definitely there are rents that are below this amount. Many of them are out of reach for many households. The definition of affordable housing is when a household doesn't spend more than about 30% of their income towards housing. So in terms of the right-hand side, the one bedroom, you need to be able to earn about $83,000 per year to afford a one bedroom, $115,000 per year to afford a two bedroom, $158,000 per year to afford a three bedroom. And in terms of the house, on the left-hand side, the purchase price, you'd need to earn at least $223,000 per year to afford that. Next slide, please. This slide really represents an interesting demographic, which is that there are roughly the same number of people who commute into San Mateo on a daily basis as commute away from them for jobs elsewhere. There are only about 7,300 people who live and work in San Mateo. Next slide, please. Some of the housing issues here, which basically should probably come in as no surprise, is housing at various sizes and types, housing affordability, displacement, connection between employment and community resources, and housing issues related to special needs. These are typically households that are extremely low income, including those with physical and mental or developmental disabilities. Next slide. Let's talk a little bit about the housing element, which is concurrent with the work that we're doing with the CDBG program. The housing element is part of the general plan that is being updated concurrently with the general plan. And it's the only chapter of the general plan that must be approved by the state, and it occurs in 8-year cycles. We have to plan for, in the housing element, housing for all economic segments of the community. And how we do this is the state provides numbers to the Bay Area of how many units have to be accommodated, and then ABAG, which is a regional planning agency, assigns those units to each jurisdiction. And that's called the Regional Housing Needs Allocation, or RHNA. So every jurisdiction has to have a site inventory that would accommodate the RHNA allocation. Next slide, please. So just so you'll understand where this all fits in, the housing element, on the left-hand side is the general plan, which is big picture stuff, and talks about where we want growth to happen, generally speaking, over a long time period. And then at the specific plan level, we're talking about where should specific areas of the community be upzoned or changed or whatever for development. And at the last level, the zoning code really kind of gets to the nitty gritty about what do the buildings look like. Next slide, please. One of the key changes to the housing element is something called affirmatively furthering fair housing. And this is a new requirement, and it requires jurisdictions to really look at ways to combat discrimination and foster inclusive communities. One of the ways that we do this is addressing disproportionate housing needs, and overall looking at ways we can also reduce poverty or concentrations of poverty. Next slide, please. Some of the data that we have to look at for the AFFH, which is affirmatively furthering fair housing, is cost burden. How much should some household pay for housing? If someone pays more than 30% for their housing costs, that means they are cost burdened. And according to this graph, various racial or ethnic groups pay more for housing than other groups. In this example, Black and African American households and Hispanic or Latinx households are more significantly cost burdened than other groups. Next slide, please. We look at overcrowding as another metric. We see that Hispanic, Latinx households and other groups that are mixed or multiple race groups experience overcrowding more than others. Next slide, please. Homeownership is a big issue. It's one of the ways that families build wealth over time. And like much of the Bay Area, if not the country, some groups have higher percentages of homeownership than others. Next slide, please. This slide illustrates the extent of neighborhood segregation in San Mateo. We see that the green areas are mostly white and Asian, whereas the two differing pinks represent areas where there's the greatest diversity, i.e. 3 or 4 more race or ethnic groups combined. Next slide, please. The State Tax Credit Allocation Committee, or TCAC, provides information about the areas through the state with the level of resources available to the community. This can include access to high-performing schools and other amenities. We see here on the slide that the areas in green have moderate levels of resources, with blue gradations showing the highest resources. This information is important for the housing element as we are required to ensure that lower resource areas are not further impacted by lower income households or poverty. Affordable housing should be located in areas where there are higher resources available to residents, which helps in a citywide distribution of units by income. Next slide, please. Next section, and it's the short section, environmental justice is closely woven into the affirmatively furthering fair housing requirements. This really is about ensuring the protection of environmental and human health across all protected classes by race, ethnicity, etc. And the actions taken by the housing element should not create disproportionality, which creates adverse environmental effects against low-income neighborhoods, ethnic minorities, etc. Next slide, please. So this is an interesting slide. This is from something called the Cal Environmental Screen, which is a statewide risk assessment tool that measures the cumulative impacts of multiple sources of pollution. And the indicators were selected based on scientific literature that confirms their detrimental effects on human, and especially child, health. And it includes things like ozone, diesel, particulate matter, drinking water problems, pesticides, toxic release, traffic cleanup sites, etc. And again, the focus here is on locating housing, especially affordable housing, in areas where projected higher health outcomes will occur. So in this instance, the more positive environmental outcomes include the green areas. And also targeting resources to households already living in areas that don't have as good environmental outcomes, which is, for example, through CDBG funding. With that, I'll turn it over to, I think, Sandy.
Thank you. This is just a little bit to let you know the timeline of our work on both the housing element and the general plan. As Diana mentioned, the general plan is our master document that expresses the community's vision for how the city will look and feel and change over the next 20 years. It's a long-range plan through 20 years. The housing element, as she mentioned, is a little more specific in that it's the state provides specific guidelines and has basically told us that our planning period will be 2023 to 31. And so we are working on that plan in accordance to the state timeline. So as a result, the general plan has been working over the last year or so, and then prior to COVID, on determining the growth scenario to base the long range plan on. And right now, the general plan team is working on the technical studies and all the evaluation and analysis they need in order for us to pick a growth scenario to base our plan on. So for the next several months, there won't be any community meetings for the general plan. They're working on the technical side of things. So also during the next couple months is when we'll be doing the major community outreach for the housing element. And then with our goal of having a draft plan prepared just after the first of the new year, so that then we can have our plan reviewed by the state, adopted by the city council, et cetera. So we're really focusing on the next few months to work on our plan. Tonight is the first step in just listening to the needs that we're interested in listening to stories, what people's experiences are, anything that we can hear from the community to couple with the statistical stuff that Diana just presented to us so that we can work on our plans. So that closes the staff presentation. And before we open it up to public comment, if there's any questions that the commissioners might have before we move forward, now would be the time to ask those.
Commissioners, do you have questions?
I don't have any questions.
Oh, go ahead. Yeah. Mhm. Go ahead, Sherry.
No, I don't. Oh, no, I don't have any questions. Actually, it was very thorough. I liked what I'm seeing so far. So
Mhm.
it looks exciting.
Yeah, thank you to staff. This is very well done. Lots of information. Now, where can people access this after the meeting?
Yeah, so at our very last slide, we'll have our website, but this will, the recording of this meeting, as well as the staff report and the meeting notes, we have somebody taking notes, will all be captured and posted on our website in like about a week or so.
Oh, good, good.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions or comments from commissioners? Okay, we will move to open hearing. For members of the public who would like to comment, reminding people that your comments are limited to 3 minutes. We'll be timing them. And so if you would like to comment, use the raise your hand feature on Zoom or press #9 if you are calling by phone. Okay. Do we have anybody queued up for comments yet? Or questions?
Yes, we do. So I'm going to go ahead really quick. And can everyone, so I'm going to stop sharing really quick. Is everyone able to see my virtual background? Great. So this is going to be basically our timer for our participants. If we interrupt you, that doesn't mean we don't like you. We just want to make sure everyone has a chance to participate. So try to keep it within the 3-minute time limit. We have one person raising their hand right now. Laura from Hip Housing, I'm going to go ahead and unmute you, and you will be having the floor.
Great. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great, thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm Laura Finucchi with Hip Housing. Thanks so much for the opportunity to share some information with you about our home sharing program, which is a vital program to help people address their housing needs here in San Mateo and throughout the county. Next year, we're going to be celebrating our 50th anniversary of providing affordable housing in San Mateo County. And as we started to look through our archived newspaper articles about the agency as well as housing issues in San Mateo County, the challenges we're facing today are not that much different than what people were experiencing 20, 30, 40 years ago. We actually found articles about the benefits of having an ADU, others about aging in place, and of course, others about the lack of affordable housing, which are all still relevant topics today. But what we've learned is that it takes a variety of housing choices to meet the needs of our community. And home sharing was included as a homelessness prevention strategy, and one that also addresses housing for special needs group in the last housing element plan. And so we're hopeful that it will continue to be included in new updates. About 30% of our home sharing matches are residing here in the city of San Mateo. Some of the challenges that our home seekers in San Mateo have experienced the last year are losing their housing because the landlord has sold the property and moved out of the area, or needed the room back for a family member or caregiver. In fact, 50% of the San Mateo home seekers who applied to the program this year had to move because of a situation like this. We have applicants in the city who are able to get back to work, but had their hours reduced because of the pandemic, which makes it particularly difficult for them to anticipate what their situation will be like their income situation will be like from month to month. We also see a trend that home seekers are already home sharing as a way to keep their housing costs at or below that 30% affordability level. San Mateo home providers, whether they're renters or owners, also face housing challenges. In fact, our San Mateo home providers were spending about 66% of their income on housing costs. Many of our older adult home providers have passed away this year, and they had been sharing their home for many years. And we noticed that most of them were in their 90s. And family members were indicating that by having a housemate live with their loved one, it allowed their parent to age in place, stay active, and feel more secure at home. So the connection between improved health and well-being connected to housing is incredibly important. So we hope that home sharing will continue to be listed as an affordable housing strategy in the housing elements. And I thank you for giving me the opportunity to share information with you this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. We appreciate your comments. This has been an important program. I would also like to remind people, if you're commenting or asking questions, if you ask a question of staff, it won't be answered during your presentation. Staff will attempt to answer questions after we're all done with any presentations or comments. Do we have another person on the line?
Yes, we do. So next up in line, we have Alex Rogala. Alex, I'm going to hit allow to talk and you will have the floor.
Good evening, city staff, commissioners, and members of the San Mateo community. I'm Alex Regala, and I'm Associate Project Manager at Mid-Penn Housing Corporation, a nonprofit housing developer in the area. In January, we're going to be breaking ground on Kiku Crossing, our new development in partnership with the city, which will provide affordable housing to 225 households in the downtown area. Mid-Penn has built 5 and continues to operate 3 properties in the city of San Mateo, and we're aware of just how much demand there is for housing that folks can actually afford. These properties in operation have 190 units combined, and the wait lists are over 2,500 applicants. Across the county, Mid-Penn's wait list of applicants is over 18,000. Like much of California and the country, the peninsula faces an acute housing crisis. According to data published by the California Housing Partnership, approximately 25,000 low-income renters in the county do not have access to an affordable home. Nearly 90% of extremely low and very low-income renters pay more than half of their income on housing. These high housing costs disproportionately affect Black and Latinx renters compared to their white counterparts. High rents are contributing to displacement and exacerbating segregation across our region. This does not need to be the case. The educational, economic, and environmental resources that the city of San Mateo has are a source of opportunity. But historically, these resources have not been shared equally. In fact, state policy, as was mentioned earlier, recognizes this and has designated approximately 65% of land area in the city as high or highest resource in an effort to channel affordable housing investment into places like San Mateo. We believe that affordable housing can and should be in San Mateo's future. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you, Alex. We appreciate that. Our next person, do we have someone else lined up?
We currently do not have any more hands raised.
Okay, we'll give someone.
I'm so sorry. It looks like someone actually just raised their hand.
Okay.
All right. Kalisha Webster from Housing Choices, you have the floor.
Good evening, commissioners. My name is Kalisha Webster. I'm a housing advocate for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities with Housing Choices. As a direct service provider helping people with developmental disabilities find independent housing, we see firsthand every day the growing need for this high-risk population to have access to independent housing as more group homes are closing and many are living at home with aging parents. Currently, there are 817 residents in the city of San Mateo with developmental disabilities, including 518 adults. Of those adults, 88% still live at home with aging parents or in licensed care facilities because of the lack of affordable housing in the city. While people with physical disabilities may require modifications to the design of their unit to increase accessibility, what people with intellectual and developmental disabilities require is coordinated services funded by the Regional Center, which assist them with finding and maintaining housing. We have found that the most effective way to plan for this need is by incentivizing developers to create inclusive, affordable housing with set-asides for people with developmental disabilities who require these coordinated services. CDBG funds can be critical to the development of affordable housing that is financially feasible. Developers are already required by state financing programs to include 15% of the units planned in a new affordable project for people who need physically accessible units, but no such mandate exists for those with severe disabilities who require coordinated support services. In creating guidelines for the scoring of any competitive requests for proposals for CDBG funds, the city of San Mateo should grant additional points to affordable housing projects that make a percentage of units subject to a preference for identified categories of people with special needs who require coordinated on-site services, including but not limited to people with developmental disabilities who require coordinated services from Golden Gate Regional Center.
Thank you. We appreciate your comments. Are there further people that would like to make comments or raise questions?
Nope, currently we do not have any more hands raised.
Okay. Well, I want to very much thank those who have presented your.
Wait, there is a hand raised.
Oh, there is now a hand raised. Okay.
We do? Sorry, I'm not seeing one.
There was. Did someone want to speak and then took their hand down? Yeah.
We do have. Okay, Ronnie? I'm going to allow you to talk. You have the floor.
Hi, my name is Ronnie McGill, and I work for Housing Choices, but I am a regional center client, which means that I have a developmental disability. I appreciate the time that you're giving us, and I don't have prepared remarks, but what I'd like to say is you guys have a great big hammer that you can use to make developers give more affordable housing because they want to develop in the city of San Mateo because of its location and its skill base. So use that hammer wisely but firmly to say, hey, you want to have a $5,000 apartment for rent? More power to you. But hey, why not have $1,000 or $2,000 a month apartments? You know, because there are enough people who make $200,000 a year or more to live in the city, or there wouldn't be rents that high. But also make them available for people who aren't as rich. And if I can just give a specific complaint, I live in a brand new building. It's a beautiful building, but there's a bike lane and no parking within the front of the building. So there's a fire hydrant in front of the building. So anybody who parks there is parking illegally, which means that the handicap bus legally can't park there. The delivery people can't park there. So it's just things that when you're approving things, ask simple questions like, hey, where are people supposed to park? And that's really all I have to say, but thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ronnie. We appreciate that. Mhm. Are there further people raising their hands?
Nope, I think we don't have any more.
Okay. And again, I want to thank those who have raised their hands, who have made comments. These are very important for us to hear, to get your perspective, to get the perspective of people whose lives are very involved in all of this. We do very much appreciate it. We will now close the public comment period, and commissioners can make comments or ask further questions of staff at this time. Comments from other commissioners?
I think I have something to say. This is Sherry, Vice Chair. It's good to hear about what's being said about the housing that's going on in San Mateo. I can say that I do have several members of friends and family who are looking for housing, who has been affected by the pandemic, and some who actually haven't. It's just been hard, but they want to stay in San Mateo because of the neighborhood and just what it offers, because it's just a great, San Mateo is just a great community in general. And so it's good to see that there's others that care about this, care about housing and really are actively fighting to make sure that there's something that's affordable for all. Because just if you look at the prices, they are definitely different, and you can tell. But I do appreciate everything that we've heard from everyone, and I thank you.
Thank you. Other commissioners?
I agree with Sherry as well. Also, the variety of comments that we were presented with tonight, just looking at like where parking is, not just the affordable housing itself, but also making sure that there's access to that affordable housing, especially if you are somebody with developmental disability or any kind of other need in terms of that. So I appreciate the comments from the public. Thank you.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Any other commissioners that would like to make comments? Yeah, I would like to say again to staff, this is a complicated and in many ways difficult process. And so we appreciate what you're doing, the way things are being put together, your sensitivity to the housing needs and what the future holds for us. And in a sense too, your courage in bringing these things forward for what the community needs. It's needed and very much appreciated.
Nikki, why don't you put the next slide up?
Sure.
Okay, the CDB annual plan, did you want to comment on this, Sandy or Nikki, or should we just?
Oh, well, let me just recap. There is one action item that we'd like the commission to do, and that is to adopt the public service priorities, just for the public service part of the CDBG budget. We'll be talking to you later about other community development programs for the CDBG program. But every year we do set aside the maximum amount that the program allows us to grant to community service providers, and we'll actually be issuing the RFP for that, in the request for proposals for that, excuse me, in December. And so we do need the commission to adopt the service priorities so that when people put proposals together, they know what we want to fund. So for the last several years, the service priorities have been basic human needs, senior services, youth services, and housing services. And so we just need the commission to decide whether you want to retain those service priorities or if you'd like to change them for the next program year. So that's the one action we do need from you tonight.
Yeah, thank you. Do any commissioners have any comments on the priorities?
I move that we retain the priorities, the existing priorities.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
A second.
Just one quick note to realize that the way they're listed is not a ranking. It's just a list. And so, it's not saying that senior services are more important than housing services. They're all very important. Okay, well, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, say aye.
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 All those opposed, say nay. Okay, we have our priorities. The housing element. Do commissioners have comments regarding the housing priority needs?
And just to clarify, this could be either your own observations and opinions or based on things that you heard tonight. A few of you already made some comments, so, but if it'd be nice if each commissioner could share with us what you're thinking as we move forward through our process.
Yeah, it's important to get the input from each commissioner on an important element like this. So I could just start. As we go through the housing element, this is a huge deal for San Mateo. And what we're going to be determining for the future. It struck me so much as I was listening to the public presenters on the massive needs that we have and the lack of affordability that we have for housing in San Mateo. So, this is, like I said, this is extremely important, and we appreciate the staff's work on this and their guidance and leadership as we get all of these plans together. Other
We have a raised hand from Vice Chair Overall.
I agree with you, Jerry, and also just with the staff stated, I think that what we're seeing a lot of is just that differences where a lot of places are like $5,000, and then there could be some that are lower, and they're just really sprouting. A lot of places are sprouting up all throughout San Mateo, but they're still really not affordable for everyone. I'm currently helping 3 people that I know that I work with try to find housing, and it's been so hard just trying to find something within their budget that's not going to, if they had an emergency elsewhere, not be able to cover rent. And they don't even actually have like a job that's like, they're doing fine, not great, but fine, and it's still really hard for them, but they want to keep their kids in school, not to keep changing schools. So seeing that this seeing the differences, and one actually happens to be in a wheelchair. So it's just seeing that difference of what's happening and what's being planned. One, it gives me hope, but I'm hoping that a lot more can be done.
Thank you. Who's next?
I can go. I apologize that my camera is not on right now. I wanted to thank staff for and especially Diana for breaking down what is a very complex document into a very understandable concept for even someone like me who's kind of green when it comes to housing elements. For me, I appreciate the priorities that we're keeping for the CDBG grants. And I just want to note that for the housing element, it is important to me that as we put the housing element together, that we focus on meeting our RENA numbers in locations that are across the city and not just in specific neighborhoods or pockets. We need to make sure that it's equal across the city.
Yes, very much. Thank you. Let's see. Do we have who hasn't spoken up as a commissioner yet? Yes.
I can just agree with what's been said. Thank you to staff, especially Diana. The slideshow was really informative when you take this kind of global housing problem and you can put it down into some numbers about what a family might actually need to earn in order to pay for these things and what percentage of their income that looks like. Because sometimes I think it gets a little muddy when we talk about what is affordable and how that actually looks for a specific family. So I think that was really informative, and I thank you for your hard work on that. I'm looking forward to really digging in on this. I think the needs and the services that we've looked at and we've identified as our target areas are incredibly important, and I'm just ready to get started.
Thank you.
So I will go ahead and share that I echo my fellow commissioners' appreciation to staff for all of their analysis, the hard work, the PowerPoints, in breaking this down and making this digestible pieces for us to understand. Speaking for myself, learning a lot and trying to read as much as I can. So I've been subscribing to a lot of the housing policies and procedures that the city provides, and I see that the city will be, or I believe the county will be offering a 4-part free webinar series, and they're holding it on Wednesdays that I will definitely tune into. And so wanted to remind fellow commissioners that if you don't have it on your calendars, please mark it. Good opportunity to absorb more information from the community. And I also wanted to thank the public speakers today for coming forward and sharing their concerns. I encourage more people to come forward so we can also hear what your challenges are, so we can do as best we can as a commissioner and city to improve accessibility to affordable housing.
Thank you. Have we covered all of the commissioners?
I think that's 5, yes.
Here we have. Okay. Again, thank you for your comments.
We have one more. I'm sorry. Nikki, you want to advance? We do have one more slide to wrap all this up.
Absolutely.
And it's actually a really good segue that Commissioner Bowles mentioned the workshops that the county is going to present. So, but first of all, the next public event on the housing element, we're just calling it Housing Programs and Policies Workshop for now. That will be November 2nd. And that will be an opportunity. Unfortunately, we won't be able to meet in person. I wish we could, but we will do a Zoom meeting, but we will be able to break people into breakout groups and have conversations about different programs. We'll give an overview of what we're doing now, and then ideas of maybe things we can do in the future. And it will be an opportunity for people to share ideas with their neighbors in that workshop. So that's a really important workshop for our process, and hopefully is really informative to the public as well. And then as Sherry Bowles just mentioned, the 21 Elements is the county-wide collaborative. All the cities in San Mateo County are working in the housing elements all at the same time. And so a lot of the information that we're collecting is common to all of us. And so there are a number of just housing topics. They're just informative workshops that are scheduled. And so you can go to 21elements.com and find the list of the workshop titles and reserve to attend them if you'd like. A number of the agencies that we fund with CDBG have been invited to present information to the county as a whole through 21 Elements. So agencies that probably normally would have come to this meeting, a couple of them have already presented this Monday, and then over the next month or so, we'll be hearing from other providers as well. So that information is really helpful to us, as tonight's testimony was super helpful. We're going to have an online survey available. It's not quite ready yet. It'll be ready in mid-October. This will be a way for people who maybe don't have the ability to attend the meetings to at least let us know their thoughts. We are offering to come out to either existing groups that meet on a regular basis or classes, events. We are willing to come and do short presentations for small groups. We're willing to help people have their own conversations. If they want to get some friends together and have a discussion, we'd be able to prepare survey materials and help guide. If you don't want the city staff coming to one of your gatherings and you want to just meet on your own, we're happy to help coordinate that. So if anybody has any ideas where you think a group might be interested in this topic, just let us know and we'll work with you to figure out the best way to make that happen. And we're super flexible on what we're interested in trying to get more people to come on board. And then last but not least, the final slide has our contact information. The website for the housing element is cityofsanmateo.org, housing element 2023. You can sign up for our email list. Everything that we do is blasted out to the email list. And if you just want to talk to us or ask us a question, you can call staff directly on our housing line or email us directly at housing@cityofsanmateo. So that's the end, the close of that.
Thank you. Do we have any further reports or announcements from staff?
The only thing I wanted to mention is that you all should have received your invitation to the Boards and Commission thank you event on October 22nd. And if you haven't RSVP'd, I encourage you to RSVP and attend.
I'm very excited for that.
It's usually a really nice event. And even with COVID, they're attempting to do an in-person event outdoors and spread out, but so.
I'm excited because we get to dress up, and anytime we can dress up like in your favorite 80s or 90s.
There you go. There you go. They usually
like the
are.
best years.
What to wear? I don't know.
You don't have to if you don't want
really
to.
Anything that doesn't match, like really, it's like what went on are loud colors. So I'm so excited to actually have like.
That's excellent. Good to hear. Anyway, it's a nice event where the city council really shows its appreciation for all the volunteers who are on our boards and commissioners, because we do appreciate your time. You don't have to do this and you're giving up of your precious time. So we do appreciate that. So that's all I have. I don't have any other reports and announcements.
Great. If there's nothing more for the commission, may I hear a motion to adjourn?
A motion.
A second.
And a second.
A second.
I declare the meeting adjourned. Good night, all.
Hey. Good
Good
night.
night.
Thank you
Thank
all.
you. Good night.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Nice job to the chair.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Very good. Take care.